Welcome to the shop. I'm glad you joined me. Today I'm going to talk about some tools that I use on the lathe that are chisels, turning chisels. And I'm doing a video because some people ask me what I like to use doing bowl turning versus spindle turning. So I wanted to go through a few of the tools with you and give you some insight into what I use. And I'm by no means a professional. There are professional wood turners that crank these bowls out, and I am more about discovering what I find inside of a block of wood rather than starting to make a bowl from scratch. I take the piece of wood, mount it on the chuck, and then I play around with it, and I discover things about the wood as I go along. Bowl turning is definitely different than spindle turning, and you use different tools, different chisels with it, because you're cutting the wood in a different way. So this is purely going to be about what I use for bowl turning. So let's get started. First, I want to apologize for this hot lamp up here, but when you're doing bowl turning or any other turning, you have to make sure you have plenty of light. I keep this light as an accessory light just to flood this area so that there are no shadows. And then I have another light down here, a little clip-on desk lamp, and that I can aim at my work from behind and give a hot lamp through the wood and see how thin it is and how far I've gone. But that's really not what this is going to be about, and this is a bowl that I've finished, so I'm not even going to be turning it or anything. I just wanted to show you some of the tools that I use. So the first thing is something called a thumbnail gouge. Now, most of mine are Robert Sorby's, but not all of them. This one is, and these others are, but I use 3 different sizes of the thumbnail gouges. And I do a grind on them, which is called a David Ellsworth grind. And I can show you that in a little bit of how I sharpen them. But you can see how far back this cutter comes. It's sharp at the point, and you see that there's a little oval there. And that's where I do my lead in, but it'll cut all along this edge. So if I come in this way into the bowl, I dig in with that point, but then I can turn it and I can work the chisel around and be cutting all on this edge as I do a sweep into the bowl. Now this is a 5/8 inch one. You can see how thick it is. Here's a 1/2 inch one, and here's a 3/8 inch one. The 3/8 inch one I don't really use a lot on bowls. It's really for more smaller little pieces, maybe on some of those little champagne glasses that I do, but they're really useful when you want to get in and just pull out a little shaving, but not for roughing out at all. The 1/2 inch comes in handy when you have an area in a bowl that you really want to get into that corner in the back. So that's when I'll use the smaller one. And the 5/8 is the one that I'll really take a lot of meat off at a time because it's substantial, it's thick, it's a good long handle, and it will give you a nice clean shaving. Now, once I've gotten down in and gotten basically what I want to come back in and I want to smooth the surfaces. And sometimes those will do a fine job if I get a good cut coming in. At giving you an edge here, but the bottom sometimes has to be cleaned up, and in that case I'll use a scraper. Now this is a very thick, 1/2 inch thick Robert Sorby scraper, and you see the bevel on it is not very great. It doesn't need to be. All that you need is that edge protruding past that back part, but you can put it on your rest and you can come into the back and just draw it across, and it will give you a really nice smooth shear, almost like sandpaper, taking off the edges. And a lot of times when you're doing a bowl like this, you'll get little ribs where you weren't able to really get a flat, clean surface. And this will work very well to clean that up. I also have triangular ones like this, little angled. This is again a scraper, and I'll use that to get in a little corner. Very useful. And I have a right angle one and a left. And then I have, these are some older ones. This is a scraper that was my father's. And with this one, I did the grind on it all the way around to the back. So it allows me to use this whole area here to cut with. So when I'm coming in here and I'm cleaning up an edge, I don't have to worry about coming to a flat. It's going to cut all the way around to here. And that's important because you want to be able to go off an area you're cutting and then taper off of that without destroying another part of the bowl. So those are some of the tools that I use in the bowl turning. I have, you can see a bunch of other chisels here, but those I don't use for the bowl turning. Now, this is another one I use for bowl turning, and I don't particularly care for it too much. It's got a carbide cutter on it that revolves, so once you sharpen it, you can actually get a lot of use out of it. It's got a 5/8 inch shaft, sort of a golf club handle on it, and this one you can come in and just basically work the piece through this way. So what's happening is you're coming down and you're cutting on that angle, and you can get some nice shavings. And a lot of times this little point is very good for getting in little areas in the back that are hard to reach. And another thing for hard to reach areas is this scraper here. And you can see it's, again, a Robert Sorby, and there's a little nut here and an opening, and there is a little cutter on the end here that's sharpened from this point all the way around to here. And with this one, it's for if you had a bowl that you really wanted to get in a little hole and then hollow out behind, that flat sits on your rest, and then you can work it in and behind an area and scrape and clean up an area. So another handy tool, but I wouldn't say that this is necessary for a beginner if you're just learning to turn. But the thumbnail gouges are absolute and the scrapers are absolute. So those are the tools, the basic tools that I use. And let me go from here over to the sharpening area and I'll show you how I sharpen them. So this is my sharpening corner. And over here you can see the grinder, and this is the depth gauge. I'll show you in a second. And this is where I work. I keep a cup of water in case it overheats. I can cool off the chisel quickly if I need to, but normally I do it so fast it really doesn't matter. So these are the depth guides that I was talking about, and they're drilled to different depths, and the sizes vary so that if I'm doing the 1/2 inch, this is the one I'll use. If I'm doing the 5/8, I'll use this one here, and that'll change how deep the setting is. And it goes along with this Wolverine sharpening jig. Now, the way this works is this just clamps on to your chisel like that, and you just put it in, loosen this up, and then make sure that's tight to it. And now that is all set at the proper depth for me to put on the grinder. This is called a one-way sharpening system by Wolverine. So this is another little tip about sharpening, and I use this tip on not just the ones when I'm sharpening on the grinder, but also on a stone and other things. But I keep these Sharpies in the shop. And that way what I do is I color in the edges, and you'll probably notice on some of them that you saw some of these marks left. But the reason for this is that if I color them in, then I know, and I'll show you, whether or not I've got the jig set up properly at the right angle, because when I make my first pass, I'll see exactly how how sharp, what's getting sharpened and what's not. Okay, so I've set this up to where I expect it to be correct, and I've got the one-way jig on this, and this point just sits in this little pocket here, all the way to the back, and you can see that I can pivot on it. And what I do is, all I do is I start up, and then I'm going to shut this off and just do a slight grind on it like that, and that will show me, I hope you can see this, but you can see it's only grinding at the bottom there. So that means I need to adjust because I want it to go all the way across that surface. So I'm going to move that out a little bit so I get more contact, a little more. So I moved it out to that line there. Turn it on and off. And now you can see that that line is going all the way up from the top to the bottom. That's what I need. So my line on here was correct, and now I'm all set to do the grinding. I don't apply a lot of pressure, and it might get noisy when I do this, but you'll see the sweep that I do. This is the 5/8 inch one, and it's set to the proper length. And that looks like an okay grind. It's not quite getting to the bottom, but that's okay. It's a little awkward doing it because I'm trapped in here with the tripod, but you can see how the grind goes all the way around. And this is now extremely sharp and ready to go to work. So now the scrapers, you blacken the same thing, you do the same thing, and that way you can set the angle and know that you're going all the way across the same angle that you were. And it's pretty simple. And I even have this grinder off right now. It's really all you need. Now, normally, this is a cool stone. And normally I have a cool stone over on this other side too. But it was pretty much worn out, so I put this older one in. It's a little too coarse for the work we're doing, but this is nice. I usually use a white stone on that one there. But you'll see, you just turn it on and shut it off. And then you're done. Now, I did that with the grinder off. I turned it on and turned it off. You can see the grind around there, and there's a burr all the way around here, and that's exactly what you want. You want that little burr, and that will do a nice job of cleaning up little edges and things like that. So it's really that simple and that quick, and one chisel will last you a long time because that's all you're doing. Now, if you do it freehand, and some people do, on the gouges, and you can go through a gouge in a short amount of time if you're doing it freehand and keep working it and working and working it. The trick really is to only just make one clean pass, and that's it. So these are the tools I use. I'm sorry I'm not in the middle of a bowl that I can actually show you how they work, but I can perhaps do that for you later. But this is a really handy guide to have, this one way, and it works with both of the gouges. and gives you a really, really sharp edge because it's very controlled. And because of this cut, you get a lot of cut to it, not just using the tip, but you get this whole length being able to come down along the side inside of a bowl and really peel off. That's the David Ellsworth grind that I talked about. And while they call it that, my father taught me that grind probably 40 years ago. So it's not something new. And here it is in the smaller one. And then sharpening this one, I just use a stone and just sort of sharpen that edge. It's so small, you're just really having to sharpen from around here. So that's pretty simple. I just use a little handheld stone. The scraper, you saw me sharpen that one, and it's the same for the larger ones or the angled ones. The angled ones, all you're doing is you're turning it on, shutting it off, and then just feeding that in and out. You don't want to stay there and do this, or you'll just run out of chisel very quickly, because they do dull fast depending on what kind of wood you're using. So there's the right angle and the left angle, and so those are very handy to have, and you can make them yourselves if you have some flat stock that's square or round. You can shape them to whatever shape you want. This one here, this is a Marples, and it had this long bevel on it. So what I've done is I've just resharpened it to what I like, and so there's a secondary bevel here. And so all I'm doing is just touching that edge like that, very simply, very lightly, not spending a lot of time on it, because you'll do it often enough. So I hope this has been informative. Just a quick little video I put out because my friend Sven asked about what tools I like. And there are really expensive versions of all of these that you can buy that are probably $300-400 each. And some are even longer and bigger for people that are doing really large bowls, but I find these suffice for most bowls that I do, and I turn up to 24 inches or so. You just have to sort of take your time. And like I say, I use the scrapers as a finisher after I've used these to do the hollowing out. And there's a trick to hollowing out that you should learn, which is to come in from the inside and work towards that inside part. There are plenty of good videos on that sort of thing. So anyway, I hope this helps, and I hope you appreciate me showing them and not necessarily getting into the actual using of them. But glad to have you in the shop, and thanks for coming.